Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the AI InterConnect podcast. I'm your host, Laurent. At AI InterConnect, we explore the people, ideas, and technology shaping how industry evolved through AI, automation, and human centered innovation. Today, I'm joined by Brian Ritchie, founder and CEO of Kama.ai. And Kama.ai develops knowledge graph AI technology designed to help organizations, communities, and institutions preserve, structure, and communicate knowledge with greater accuracy and contextual understanding. Brian, thank you for being here. Very happy to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Laurent. Very pleased to be here.
Wonderful. Oh, I'm excited. I think today's conversation will be particularly interesting because it connects AI with something people don't often discuss deeply enough, which is cultural preservation, digital storytelling, knowledge transfer, and long-term legacy. Let's start with your background so listeners understand the path that led you here. Brian, one thing I noticed during our first conversation is that your journey into AI did not begin from hype and trends. It seemed rooted in human history, identity, and communication. Brian, how did your background in enterprise telecom and your personal heritage lead you to build Kama AI?
Very good. Thank you for the question. Yes. I'm a indigenous person, the first people of Canada, the people that are indigenous to the land. On my dad's side, on my mom's side, she was a full Italian. My dad is full Cree and part of the first peoples of Canada. So you may know, indigenous cultures around the world, they were often colonized. They often lost culture, lost language, and lost important stories. In the indigenous culture, in ours at least, we did not have a written language. Stories were told by a human to human, person to person. Knowledge keepers would inform other people in the tribe, and they would communicate their stories and their culture in that way. Telling the stories, carrying the culture went by person to person communication. Then I ended up in an engineering background and then ended up in technology in the early days of personal computing. Worked for a number of years in enterprise with companies like Oracle, and then got into telecom. So I became a person who was selling solutions to enterprise. So I became this person that had maybe two worldviews. In some indigenous circles, we call that two-eyed seeing. You see with the indigenous lens, but you can also see with a Western lens. And here I am also that, my mom was Italian and my father was Cree. So I ended up seeing the opportunity to use technology and let's say, database structures such as a knowledge graph as a way of being able to store data accurately. And if something is digitally stored, it can be preserved. Later, we decided or discovered how to turn that into an AI, a conversational AI guided by human values, which gives it some humanistic characteristics. And we thought that this technology could actually be beneficial for, let's say, cultures, any culture, it doesn't matter, to carry their stories forward, to deliver their message, to deliver their mission and carry out their mission, regardless of whether that happens to be an enterprise wanting to tell its potential clients about its products and services, or a community wanting to preserve the important stories and teachings of its past. Yeah, it's really kind of a mashup of two different worlds.
Okay, yeah, I love it. This is so interesting and so different from what he heard so far on AI Interconnect, and thank you for taking the time. Then I also found it interesting that your original mission was not enterprise software first. It was preserving stories and identities before they disappear, as you mentioned. Then a lot of AI companies starts with productivity or automation. Your approach feels different because the human layer became first. When you explain Kama AI to someone outside the AI industry, How do you describe what the company actually does and who you help or who it helps?
Yeah, so I'll add in something else. Or let's say classical technology is this knowledge graph, conversational AI. It presents very similar to other chatbots, if you want to call it that, or conversational intelligence. You ask a question, you get an answer, or you get a number of answers. We have this added value of being able to rate information by human values, which can therefore give you prioritized information based on what you're interested in. If I'm buying an automobile and I value luxury and style, then I might want to, then certain vehicles might be prioritized to me. If I valued performance and cargo carrying capacity, well, a very different vehicle would be suggested towards for me. So that's our classical technology. But of course, in November 2022, ChatGPT or OpenAI blew up the world with ChatGPT, and generative AI became very interesting and very prominent. We then started to look at integrating generative AI into our platform. It first became, as you say, we're very human centered. It first became a way for a community member, an enterprise subject matter expert, whatever it was, or what we call a knowledge manager generally within the system, to come up with a draft answer. We have our documents. We know of a process called RAG, retrieval augmented generation, in the generative world. Let's take our documents. Let's ask a question. Let's come up with an answer, generative, and it may be fairly accurate, but it's not exactly the words we would like to represent the community, the words we would like to represent our product, the words we'd like to represent our company. So the human takes a look at that word by word and edits it to become the perfect words for that enterprise. This is our statement. This is the way the marketing person wants. This is the words I had to put in for the lawyer. So all of these things can be taken care of by the knowledge manager acting on behalf of the organization. And then that can be placed into the knowledge graph. And that's where we get this accuracy and the ability to preserve the actual literal words that were said, maybe in a story, in a teaching, or in the marketing messages of a company. We then started looking at, well, what if we took the generative capability and didn't just use it for drafting? If we actually used it to deliver a more flexible answer to many more questions than are in the knowledge graph, perhaps. And that became a generative capability. So now we describe our agents, our AI agents, as a composite agent or a hybrid AI agent that has, we talked about two-eyed seeing a little bit. This is kind of like two-brain thinking. Left brain is very logical and deterministic. It does exactly what the enterprise or the community wanted. On the right-hand side of the brain, it's actually much more creative. And this one is based on generative AI, based on a RAG process of the documents that the community has, that the organization has. So now we have this hybrid virtual agent that actually can think very literally on one side of the brain. And it's also that side of the brain is the one that orchestrates processes too. So not just saying information or delivering information, but getting things done and maybe filling in some data in some back-end enterprise system, filling out an application and storing that application for a client, perhaps. The right-hand side of the brain is more free thinking. So we describe this as the best of both worlds. You get generative AI and knowledge graph AI for enhanced accuracy.
I love it. This is great. So, what type of organization benefit most from this approach today?
Yeah, I would say that, if you talk to investors, they really like you to pick a vertical. Let's go after the financial industry. Our technology was always built to be horizontal so that it could both serve the enterprise, but it could serve communities, or let's say any organization with a mission and a goal, and the requirement for the preservation of information and accuracy, or automation, right? So these are the opportunities with AI. So it really turns out that we've got a horizontal platform, and it turns out that we have many different types of customers. We've telecom customers, we have educational institutions, we have a small organization called Aspen Valley Wildlife Sanctuary, whose duty is to protect animals. And we have a chatbot there that allows people that have maybe found an animal that might have been orphaned or injured, and it allows them to get the right information 24/7 around the clock to assist that animal and get them to a sanctuaries where they can be nursed back to health and
I
returned to the
love it.
wild, or even kept in the sanctuary if they cannot be returned to the wild. So we have a very diverse customer set.
I love it. A great story. I also remember you mentioning your lately collaboration discussion with a professor at University of Toronto around climate change, storytelling, and education. That seems like a very powerful example of how AI can become a bridge between information and human understanding rather than just content generation. Could you talk a bit about more about that?
Yeah, so I was at a session very much like this, a virtual fireside chat. It was a real in-person meeting, but there was no real fire. And it was with a professor of University of Toronto. And we were discussing things just like this and talking about applications of AI and responsible AI. And there was another professor in the audience. And this professor came up to me after the session and said, I'm running a course on climate change. It's very topical, of course. It's very important. It's very important to First Nation people as well, indigenous people. So she said, do you think that there's any way that we could integrate, a chatbot, an AI, to be able to assist our students to deliver messages through digital storytelling that support the course, the climate change course, but we have gone out and we've taken some video. The video happens to be indigenous people, and we could use this video to be able to support the students in understanding the climate change issues better and understanding how to be a better citizen of the planet. Is that something we could do? And I said, yeah, that's absolutely something that would be a very good application. So that person applied for funding. The funding was approved a couple of weeks back, and we had our kickoff meeting last week. So, yeah, the idea is that there will be assignments. The course is on climate change, and the professor will be asking questions for assignments. Tell me why it's important that we should take care of the planet in this way or that way. And then the person will integrate or interact with the chatbot. They will ask this question. They will get an answer, and the answer will point to a video. The video is a link. They can click on the link, and they will actually see the storytelling that came from an indigenous person, possibly a youth, possibly an elder, and that person will tell a story. And the story will be used by the student to internalize the messaging and the concerns or reflections and then they will be able to answer the problems to their questions. There's something else going on there in Canada, as with other areas in the world. There is something that Canada has called the Truth and Reconciliation Report. And it's a report of about 100 different recommendations that deal with seeking the truth of what happened to Indigenous people in Canada and looking for opportunities to understand that past and acknowledge that past. And there is a recommendation within that which says that educational institutions should take some responsibility to integrate Indigenous information, Indigenous truth, and Indigenous participation into its courses. So this is actually let's say, an initiative that also points towards that recommendation.
I love it. Great initiatives. Wonderful. A great story. What stand out to me is that you're operating in a space where truth matters enormously. And right now, what feels like the hardest part of running and scaling Kama.ai?
Yeah, I think of course, every business wants to grow and increase its value, serve more customers. But if I look at what's important, our mission statement is very clear. We want to build ethical and responsible virtual agents that can support humanity. And really, it's about AI for good. That's always been our objective. So I think that we of course, we're very opportunistic, and if someone wants to take our chatbot or AI and deliver it as a marketing machine, that's fantastic. If someone wants to deliver it for compliance within an enterprise to make sure that employees have the right information at the right time to make the right decisions, that's fantastic. That's all good. really, when you think about deploying AI agents in the to serve humanity, that's a pretty big scope. Serving an enterprise is also serving humanity. Presumably, that enterprise produces a product, and the product is used by consumers or whatever. Ultimately, you know, almost any application, except maybe we would not probably want our technology used in warfare, those types of things. That's not what we're about. But any, decent use of technology or artificial intelligence to drive efficiency, ultimately produce a beneficial effect to the enterprise, which really should be producing a beneficial effect to the enterprise's customers or clients. And that's our goal, is help help the world become a better place and a more efficient place.
Yeah, yeah, of course, awesome. But what becomes harder when you try to position a more truthful AI approach in a market dominated by hype?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, what we're seeing in the marketplace is, as you say, a lot of promise, a lot of, you might say, hype. There is a path called Agentic AI, which is very interesting. We could spend the rest of the session talking about that. Agentic AI is let's say, an approach where the AI has its own agency, and that's why it's called agentic AI. And agency can be looked at from both sides. If something is useful to me, it has agency. But the agency in agentic AI means the AI itself has its own agency, its own free will, its own decision making, its own understanding. And that is something that we differ with. We don't believe in that so much. We don't believe, so we have the two sides of the brain, as I mentioned, in our, let's say, agency in terms of delivering value. Value in delivering information is one thing, but value in accomplishing what the industry calls complex tasks is a big goal for certain, and but also a big challenge. How do you make sure that this agent doesn't go off the rails? And if I was looking to move, $1,000 for the down payment on my house from this account to that account, and if I told a agent to do that, or $500,000 for a down payment these days, if I was going to do that, and the agency allowed this agent to think that it's doing the right thing, but transfer it to the wrong account, where's my money, right? And now I've got a big problem with the institution. Accuracy is fundamentally important. And I was on a call with a financial institution, and they said that it's not, we can't allow a system that is 99% reliable to be deployed. So the reliability is a big factor. The area of agentic AI is challenged in this area of reliability. In our design, we like to use the logical side of the brain, the deterministic side of the brain, and if we could call that the control plane. If we're going to have the control plane to be able to execute actions and move your money from one account to another, it's going to be, in our design, executed and controlled by what we call the deterministic side of the brain. Doesn't mean that we won't add in features from the generative side of the brain. We could use that to contextualize information, but we're not going to use it to design the process flow. That would be a much more deterministic framework that we would use. So I would say the biggest challenge right now, there's two areas of AI that we should be aware of. One is the assistance, right? That's where I use an AI to help me draft my annual report, to help me write an application for a job. That's an assistant. I am a human. I am using this AI to assist me, but I am in control of that output. Could be a journalist, and the journalist is writing a story. They want to do some research, but that person takes the responsibility, and they should, and sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't, to make sure that they fact check this article, to make sure they fact check this annual report, and that is doing the right thing, or saying the right thing. So in that area, it's not so bad because there is a human in the loop, a human who presumably is working on their own, or a human who works for an enterprise or an organization. In the area of when the AI is accomplishing complex tasks, this is where it gets really challenging. And this is where reliability is absolutely essential. There is no human in the loop. If you want to scale that part of automation, there is no time to check with a human on everything around the clock, 24/7, every interaction. You want these interactions to be thousands, if not 10,000s a second. And there's no time for a human in the loop validation. So that's where it needs to be very accurate, very important. It has to have zero tolerance, not low or not high reliability, absolute 100% reliability. And that's what I would say is the biggest challenge facing AI today in terms of deployment as what we call autonomous agents, agents that are able to act on their own.
Yeah, I mean, that's beautiful words. I mean, yeah, it's an eye opener. Definitely, I agree with all this. But LLM AI is still hallucinating itself. Then it's never 100%. But I mean, there's also a lot of tension between speed and accuracy today, and many companies want instant AI outputs, but fewer companies or fewer people talk about the reliability and governance and or historical consistency, as you just mentioned. Across fintech or cybersecurity or now education technology, one thing I consistently see is that AI is reshaping how human access knowledge. From your perspective, what shift in AI and education matters most right now, but is still underappreciated?
Could you restate the question again, please?
What shift in AI and education matters most right now, but is still underappreciated?
Okay. Yeah, very good question. Yeah. So what I think is underappreciated is, what, as I mentioned, there's two primary areas of AI: AI as an assistant and AI as an autonomous employee. Let's say an autonomous virtual employee. And right now, I think that the most of the awareness of AI is a person, talking to their favorite chatbot. We know all the names. It could be Google Gemini, it could be ChatGPT, it could be Claude. So that's what most people are seeing as AI today. And there is opportunity there. There's definitely opportunity there. But if we look at the actual efficiencies that are gained, we might think we can save, and you'll see someone say that saved me 3 hours. Would have taken me 3 hours, but it took me 5 minutes. And I have a personal use case, corporate use case. Last weekend, I was looking to do something, and I probably saved 2 to 3 hours on a task. But that's not always the case. If we're looking to get some AI to assist me in writing my annual report, it might help you, but then you have to review it, and you have to review it very carefully. And there's one thing that I would say is people are unfortunately overestimating the accuracy of the output. And therefore, we can get careless in saying, this looks quite good. Let's release this, right? Let's release this to the organization. Let's release this annual report to our shareholders. And we've all seen cases where something goes out the door that shouldn't have. So that's something in the assistant area. Two things I would point out. One is it doesn't save as much time, and I'm talking about reports that we can see. There are reports that if you study various applications, including some of the high-value ones like coding, and net it all out across all applications, the savings isn't even double-digit percentage. It's like 5% time savings in some reports. What I would say is not well understood yet is the transition to where the industry is going. The industry wants to go, enterprises want to go to autonomous agents. They want to have autonomous virtual employees. And I believe that this is the hype that you talked about and the promise of agentic AI. There is, a lot of faith that this will work out. This is maybe not a popular view, but it's the way I see the world. I don't understand as an engineer, and engineers build things that they can understand. They build things from foundational approaches that are based on truth, again, but in this time, engineering and scientific truth, and they build things up from there. When we look at large language models and agentic AI, it's founded on probability. And if something is founded on probability, it inherently cannot be reliable 100% of the time, right? We know probability is an area of statistics, and it does not equate to 100% accuracy. So I would say that The hype that you mentioned is that we will be able to have these autonomous agents that are, largely based on data and probability, and they will be able to be accurate enough for enterprise deployment. We do not subscribe to that, and that's what I would say is a second major gap right now in understanding. I wouldn't say that I'm popular in this view, though. It's something that it's the way I see it, because I'm a mechanical engineer who ended up designing an AI and building an AI company, and I see things very practically, and it has to be built up on firm foundation, and it has to be built on truth. And knowledge graphs can be this deterministic forms of AI. Other deterministic forms of AI, like robotic process automation, are also deterministic. And we actually incorporate these things. We actually, beyond the hybrid AI with two half brains, we extend into document management systems. We extend into robotic process automation, off the shelf, choose your best tool and integrate it in our composite AI system to build these reliable AI agents. So I would say that, yeah. And recently, talking to industry experts, we have a subscription for the largest technology research firm in the world. And we speak with them very regularly, maybe twice a week. And there is now an awareness based on recent, maybe 6 meetings this year. There is an awareness that there must be more focus on determinism in AI for enterprise deployment. So I would say that this is something. And someone said recently, I didn't put these words into that person's mouth. They said, perhaps you're ahead of the curve here. We are now seeing, and possibly we're seeing it a little late. We're now seeing that there must be much more focus on determinism if we want to achieve these autonomous virtual employees. So I think that there's true advantage in conversational AIs, large language models. We know these things can produce, fantastic conversations back and forth. They can also go off the rails. This is an issue. But if we're in this, and that's to have a conversation, person to virtual person, right? That can be quite good. And I can have a conversation about how sad I am that my dog died. And I had this conversation. My dog didn't die, but I had a hypothetical conversation with ChatGPT about my dog died. And it was very therapeutic. I would say it was very empathetic, and it was very therapeutic. It suggested some great things. So it can be quite good. But that's not mission critical, right? It could go off the rails, and that's not a good thing. But it's not mission critical. It's suggestions to me. It's a conversation to make me feel better, and hopefully it does. But it's not mission critical. It's not moving $500,000 from one account to another. In that area, that's where you need, absolute reliability. And this understanding is forming in the industry, in the enterprise application space, that we need more determinism, and probability is not going to cut it.
Fair enough. I love it. You have worked across enterprise technology, AI, education, and cultural initiatives. Based on what you've learned so far, what should funders and operators start or stop doing when approaching AI?
Very good question. I was at a conference. It was held in our country's capital. It was actually something called the Assembly of First Nations. The Assembly of First Nations is really a body which is a secretariat for all First Nations, 640 First Nations across Canada. And they're looking to build an AI strategy for their membership, which are First Nations. And we were building that strategy, and there was about, I guess, maybe close to 50 what they called AI experts around the room. And we were struggling with exactly the question you're asking. How do I move forward? How do I get going with AI? We want to do some AI. What should we be doing? So I would say that there are, low hanging fruit. Low hanging fruit is get one of these assistant AIs and learn how to use it in an effective way that does not expose the enterprise or the organization to, let's say, losing its knowledge into the learning system of that AI. And you can set the right features to, let's say, disable that. So learn how to use it responsibly and start getting some of the incremental benefits that you can get from these assistants. So that's good. That's a great recommendation. Start there, get some experience. Understand that you can ask a question, you can get an answer. It can be very helpful in helping you get your thoughts straight and giving you some new ideas and giving you some alternatives to what you might have been thinking. The next thing, though, if we're really looking at automation, which is the one of the biggest goals of the industry, it really starts with the problem. It does not start with the tool. One of the people in the crowd, and not the crowd, in the group that I was with, said that technology is not the actual solution. Technology is never a solution. It is only the solution in view of a problem. Everything must start with the problem. What is the problem you're trying to solve? Why do you need AI? Where do you need AI? And of course, AI could be useful in various areas. In the case of a knowledge graph, if you need accuracy, volume and automation might not be the goal, but you need accuracy. Well, this is a way that we can put, the information, the actual information that is sanctioned by the organization, whatever type of organization that is, put it in the knowledge graph, allow people conversational access to that, natural language conversational access to that. Now you've got a source of truth for the enterprise. Could be your policies, procedures, compliance rules, et cetera, et cetera. So that's useful. But if we really want to go down this automation path, now you have to start looking at where are we seeing within the operation, within the organization, repetitive processes, not just repetitive tasks, and we're looking for frequently asked questions. That's repetitive information. That's good. That's kind of a good application. Could be for generative, could be for knowledge graph. But if we actually want to start to achieve automation and efficiency against the bottom line, then it really has to start with what's the problem? Where can we see a repeatable problem that we can apply AI, and it can be quite flexible. Whether it's deterministic or probabilistic, it can still be quite flexible in all the things that it could cater to. And where can we now find an opportunity to apply technology? Technology is always the means to an end. The means to an end of saving us efficiency, saving us time on completing this repetitive task. So I would say that gain an awareness, start using AI to gain an awareness as an assistant in some of your project work, putting together some information that you might have to put together. Start to understand the possibilities, and by understanding the possibilities and knowing the problems, we are smart humans. We're working in these organizations. We're aware of the business that we conduct. Then you will start to be able to ideate the problems and apply the technology for the solutions. So I would say that start to gain some experience and don't be afraid of it. Use it in a way that is approved by your organization. Make sure that you flick the proper switches so that your information, your proprietary information, your very valuable information is not lost into the Ethernet. So use the tools responsibly, get some help on how to use the tools responsibly. And with the knowledge of how AI works, then start to look at around your organization and try to understand where are the problems that we could start to tackle. And some of the wisdom of AI is start with, of course, the low-hanging fruit. Well, yeah, using the assistant, but after the assistant, if we're looking to actually start to deploy autonomous functions for automation and efficiency, then start with something small and achievable. Don't look for a big bang opportunity. Small and achievable, one task at a time. Let's automate one task. After that, let's automate the second task. And the system will continue to grow and grow and grow. And pretty soon you'll have an agent that is taking care of 20 of the most frequent tasks that either the clientele or the employees need to have done during their day.
Yeah, that's right. I love it. Okay, what about you? What advice will you give your younger self earlier in your journey?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure I know the answer to that. I will say one thing. I had a first startup many years ago in the very early days of the internet. We started building, and we kept that company in operation, and we built an interesting application. It was a business management system. These were the days of what we called shrink wrap software. You go to your software store or you order online. The internet wasn't even available for ordering online at that time. The internet was there, but only for a website, which was kind of like Yellow Pages, taking the phone directory and putting it on the internet. Later, we got to things like e-commerce and shopping online. but you could, go to your software store, buy a box of project management software, a box of word processing software off the shelf. So in those days, that company was ultimately not successful, but it was extremely successful in teaching my younger self what I should look for if I was ever going to do this again. And I remember saying at that time, I didn't want to move forward with another technology startup, software startup. I liked the area of software until I had intellectual property. I wanted to have something that would differentiate us and something that would allow us to hold our opportunity long enough to be successful in the marketplace. So it was with that learning of my younger self. We filed a patent in 2012, and those patents started to become awarded in Canada and the US. And then that was the time I was working for industry, went to Telecom for 17 years. And it was when the patents started coming out, I said, well, if I said as my younger self that I wouldn't move forward unless I had intellectual property, then, and now I have it, I guess I really have to start this next venture. And we'd already come up with this idea of this conversational AI guided by human values based on a knowledge graph, based on truth. So yeah, I would say that, look for ways of differentiating your offering. The other thing that is a learning is, there is so much competition in the marketplace now. AI is absolutely no exception. There is tremendous competition. There's tremendous noise. There's tremendous hype. And selling into this is a challenge for any organization. Looking to book a meeting, have an initial discussion, and that can be done quite effectively in small numbers. In the sales world, I was the sales guy for most of my career. We called it targeted account selling. You want to sell to company X? Go and look up who's at company X. Who do you know that knows someone at company X? Reach out to them, phone them, send them an email, and go and have a coffee. Tell them about what you're doing. But how do you scale that? And if you want to grow a business, you have to look at how do we scale this? How do we turn this into a machine, an opportunity finding and opportunity closing machine? We close business, we get contracts. That is becoming increasingly competitive across all sectors. I mean, the world is a very busy place these days. It's a very heavily populated place. It's a very saturated place in the marketplace in almost all areas, and it is tough. So really look for ways of differentiating yourself from your competition.
I love it. I love it. And differentiation. Brian, thank you so much for joining today. I think this conversation brought a very different perspective on AI, and not just automation of productivity, but also legacy, identity, education, differentiation. I love it. Preservation of knowledge across generation. Thank you so much for taking the time. It was great to have you.
Thank you, Laurent. I really appreciate being here. Take care.
And where can people find you, read about your work, or get in touch?
Yeah, so we're on LinkedIn, of course. The company name is just as it sounds, Kama.ai, Kama with a K, and that is our website URL as well. It's our company name and our URL. So come looking, ask to have a chat. We would love to talk more about this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And that's it for today's episode of AI InterConnect. And if you enjoy it, share it with someone who is building the future, or better yet, someone who should be. And until next time, stay curious, stay creative, and keep building. Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Thank